That's gonna be what she's gonna look like in the end. What's up everyone, welcome to today's video, and we are supercharging this Dodge Viper GTS ACR edition. So the day has finally come. We've been doing a lot of prep work. If you guys haven't seen the other videos, check them out. I'll link them in the description or above here. You guys can check out all the prep work. We pinned the crank, we installed a methanol injection kit, and now we're finally ready. And we also powder coated some pieces. So we've got the car here. I haven't taken it apart just yet. We've got the blower over here, got the Kenne Belle. This is gonna be the plate that's gonna sit on, and it's gonna go through there, and these ports channel it all to the different cylinders. And over here, I have the rest of the pieces. There really isn't a whole lot, so I'm hoping this is gonna go somewhat quickly. We've got our two charge pipes. I have one more piece that I have to put in there that connects the two. And we got our fuel rails here. Pretty cool fuel rails that it comes with as well. This is the ROE Supercharger Kit. We've got our couplings, different bolts, pulley, I got fuel injectors, and we've got our map sensor. And of course, not Goo Gone, but we have a longer belt. There's all our hardware. So I'm gonna get cracking on this thing. I wanna see if we can get this done. So we've got our tune to load in. Let's go ahead and just start cracking down on this, you guys. We're gonna pull off the airbox, take off the intake manifold. This is gonna come off and stay off, but we're gonna have to take our throttle bodies off and connect it to those two pipes there. So let's get cracking, guys. Let's get everything out of the way that we don't need. Also, coolant is already drained. I kind of got that ready for this video because we're gonna have to disconnect one of the heater hose pipes over there and put this little elbow on it as well. But enough talking, let's get right into it. Next up, I'm gonna disconnect our throttle cable. So I'm just gonna pull it back, wiggle it out of here, and I'm gonna leave this bracket on our stock intake manifold because the ROE kit does come with one. Okay, throttle cable's off. I'm gonna go ahead and take off this cowl. It's held on by 4 Phillips screws. If you have wipers, you're gonna have to take those off. I'm gonna get this off so that we have access to the back here too. So I just finished removing the clips. This wire harness is actually attached to the bottom of the intake manifold, and I also finished removing all the bolts that hold on this manifold. And I'm just using one of these magnets like this to get out all of my bolts as such. So I'm gonna get this all off. Everything else is disconnected. Any of the clips, harnesses, or plugs, and then we can get this off. So just before we lift the intake manifold off, you're gonna have to disconnect the fuel line, which you can see here, it has this little quick connect, so you kind of just squeeze it, pull it off. Might want to relieve your fuel pressure off of here because this manifold actually has the fuel rails integrated. You can see all my fuel injectors, it's all inside. And I disconnected the harness here. There's 2 plugs right there, and there's a bracket that holds everything there. And those run to the fuel injectors, but we're gonna have to take that harness. It's actually connected to the bottom of the intake manifold. We'll take it all off after, but now we can lift this out. So the intake's off, as you can see, and I just spent a little bit of time cleaning things up in here because it's a little bit nasty because a lot of junk can get stuck in here. And also, this is what you'll have to do, is they're asking the instructions to plug this off. So the crankcase breather is going to get plugged like you see there. It's just kind of a little plug that goes on top of the barb that would originally come out of there. And I actually took the time to take my thermostat housing off and just put a new gasket on it and whatnot. And then you're gonna have to install this 90-degree if your vehicle is 99 and newer apparently. And then put your hose on here. So originally it's gonna be a straight shot from here. So this fitting would go there. And I actually installed a brand new Mopar one because the old one was a little bit nasty looking, but put a new one on, put my clamps on, and I've got my silicone hose in here now. So this is the way they want it because I guess the fitting or the actual manifold is gonna fit right in here. So this is the way ROE does it. And then it says to take off this metal piece on the bottom of the windshield. I guess this thing, this little kind of metal heat shield type thing, this has to come off apparently. So let me get that off and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so off comes this plate. This is just holding it here. Mine was just on with 2 bolts, but they said that it could either have a Phillips screw or it could be could be on there with glue, but there's mine. There's that plate. Okay, next up underneath here, we're gonna be installing this 1/2-inch spacer and using the original bolt. And I guess this is just gonna tilt our coil packs back a little bit. So next up, that spacer's in, good. And I was just doing a test fit like it says to do in the instructions, and make sure that this part isn't touching here, because otherwise you'd have to, you can grind from either side, but probably you'd want to take it out of this plate, just grind a bit out of there. But clearance is good, so I can take this out, put our brand new gaskets in. So I got brand new Cometic gaskets for our intake manifold, throw those in and start putting the bolts on for our plate. So you're gonna have 2 different length bolts, these which are about 1 inch and these which almost 2 inches, I guess. But you're going to need these to install this here. So the shorter ones go closer to the valve covers. So you can see I've installed them roughly. I got my gaskets in there, and then the longer ones are gonna go all down here. So there's 10 of the longer ones and then 10 of the shorter ones up top. So I'm gonna get those on, get them torqued down. We can move on to the next step. So the way they want you to tighten them is to start in the center and to tighten the upper and lower on the one side, then move to the other side, upper, lower, and then upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower. You guys get the idea. Upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower. All right, so you're gonna torque them down to 10 foot-pounds or 120 inch-pounds, same thing. So they're all torqued. Let's move on to the next step. So one thing I will show you guys is on the bottom of here with the previous manifold setup, there was kind of just one big hole. And they had them safety wired, mechanic wired, called a few different things, but they had this on there. And I noticed they still had it across here. You can see the marks from it. I actually just finished cutting it off. But take my word for it, every bolt was drilled. But the problem is on this setup, you can't run it because it has recesses for the bolt head. See there, you can see here, there, and there's a few different spots. So you can't run it, and you can actually see marks where their safety wire was getting pinched in here and kind of messing things up. So it would lift your actual plate up. So instead, I'm just putting some red Loctite on those, and the reason why I'm going so crazy on that is because I don't want these to fall out and fall into your engine, obviously. So I'm putting some red Loctite on them. I just finished putting them in. Red Loctite, even though it says permanent, still comes off. Same sort of stuff that you use on the crank bolt as well on the front on the harmonic balancer. So I'm gonna get those in and then we can move on. Next up in our instructions is to remove the top 3 bolts from the water pump, and then there's a support bracket for our superchargers. So it's gonna be this guy right here. So we've got this thing here. So those 3 bolts we have to take out and put in right there. So just under here, I just popped the belt off. So just use a 15 on the tensioner right here, and then you can get your belt off. And then we got to get to these 1, 2, and 3 bolts. Take those off so we can put on that bracket. So we've got that bracket installed, but we didn't quite tighten it down, and I threw my hose on here just to make sure she's still gonna clear, and it is tight. So we gotta leave this one loose until we actually get the blower on here. So I'm pretty much ready for that. There is an idler that goes on here, and I also disconnected or removed this idler just so I could get to that bracket. But other than that, we're almost ready for the blower to go on. There's the 2 pulleys there, and I'm just putting some Right Stuff gasket maker around this so I can put my box back on the end, and then I can go ahead, put my silicone on there and put it down. So let me get this on there. There she is. Go ahead and tighten down all those bolts. So I got the back on there, as you can see, and I'm ready. I just put some rags down there so I get staged up, because this thing is not exactly the lightest thing, and when you're bending over the engine bay, since this car's so wide, it's kind of awkward. So I'm gonna put up there so it's closer. Just laid my bead all the way around the perimeter, but inside of the screws so that there's no leakage. So just went all the way around, as you can see there. And I'm gonna go ahead and lay this in, and then I can get my bolts lined up. So we've got all the bolts tight, and they're tightened down to 10 foot-pounds, 120 inch-pounds. And you go in a circular motion, you start in the center and then kind of work your way around side to side. But there is one bolt, if you can see, right under there in the center, which is kind of fun to get to. So I have one of these ratchet wrenches, which came in super handy. It's like a flat profile, and I just kind of worked it in there. Next up is the bracket up here. I just loosened it off the snout, and I'm going to install these 2 bolts that connect the 2 here, and then that's going to give our alignment for there. So once I get those in, then I can snug everything down and snug down the bolts on the water pump. Here's where we're at now. The bracket's all tight. We've got the 2 pulleys on there. All our hardware is tight. Water pump bolts are 30 foot-pounds, and then these, they said 32 foot-pounds, I believe. So those are all tight. Everything's torqued. Now we can move on to our fuel injectors and our piping. Just before we do that though, we're gonna install our belt. It's longer for the supercharger, so let's get it on. And there we have it. We've got the belt assembly all on there. So loops around, got a lot of wrap on there, so should be good. Interestingly, this is like a low friction supercharger, so it doesn't need a whole lot of tension, surprisingly. It just uses the stock tensioner, and I guess that's good enough for it to not slip. So that's done. Let's move on. So here's where we at. I just laid these pipes in here with our fuel rails just to kind of see what it looks like. So that's gonna be what she's gonna look like in the end. One thing to note is on this box, this pipe is a little bit shorter in compared to this side. So if you notice, the fuel rail sits further back on the one side, just the way they made it, I guess. But just be conscious of that if you have to bolt or unbolt that box on the back, that the longer side goes on the passenger side. So I'm gonna take these off. We gotta put our fuel injectors in and actually get these pipings or pipes into place. So the fuel rails bolt to these pipes from the back side or bottom right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my fuel injectors in there. So get those on there, get all the wiring on, and then we'll keep going. So here's the injectors we're using, and I got a little bit of engine oil here. I'm gonna put them on our O-rings and just pop them in. Okay, so next up, we're gonna lay our harness in here on both sides and just plug all our injectors in. So everything reaches nice with the factory length. You could shorten them if you want, but I'd rather just leave them the factory length, honestly, but leave that up to you guys on what you want to do there. But so I'm gonna go ahead and just plug them all in. They are numbered from the factory, but the numbers are kind of baked off, presumably, if your car is same age as mine. But go ahead and we'll just plug all these guys in and do both sides. And this hose here, which is going to be coming off the intake plate, you're going to run this all the way down through here and to the back, because this is going to be our source for our map sensor. So we'll bring this to the back. Okay, so we'll plug in all our injectors on this side. Just to keep everything looking nice, since your wires are probably going to be baked for at least 20 years in a position, I'm just going to use some of these small tie wraps just to kind of pull the wiring down so it's not sitting up, because when this goes in here, you're going to be able to see this wire if it's way up here, but if it's sucked down, it won't be visible. So just making things a little nicer. So I've got my 2 silicone couplings here, and I did end up replacing these. I took one coupling and just chopped it in half, which is what we had originally, because the original one being, whoever knows how old are, this one looks okay. This one is demolished, as you can see. It's all falling apart, and it even has like a rub mark or a hole burnt right through it. So this one was no bueno, so I just took one and I got 2 brand new ones on there. So next up on the instructions, we've got these studs that hold on our 2 intake tubes. So I'm gonna go ahead and install these, and then we can hopefully put on our intake tube. So I've got all these stands on both sides, and I put red Loctite on the bottom of each stud that just screws into the base there as per Rose instructions. Then the top is gonna have a washer and a nylon nut on it. So pretty much ready to go. I'm gonna just put a little bit more oil on each of my O-rings on the top. I'm also gonna put some on the fuel rail side so that it slips on, and we'll get this side piping on. All right, and just like that, we have this side on. So you kind of have to make your pigtails go towards the end. You can probably adjust them once everything is in. But everything is in and down, and make sure you're fully seated on these posts. But we've got it down, so that seemed to work. You kind of have to mess with this a little bit. Like, you can't just tuck it in here and then just drop it and lay it. I kind of had to like force this up, and good thing it was a new ply or a new coupling, because this thing was getting bent quite a bit to get it in there, so I could see why the old one ripped. But anyways, she's on, so we can get our nuts on this side, and I can put on my band clamp right here and tighten this down. Woo, look at that, boys. This thing is starting to look wicked. So everything's tight on this side. I put that coupling there, you guys didn't miss that much. All the nuts are tight. Next up on the instruction list is to install this 3-foot long fuel line that connects to the factory fitting and goes up to our AN fitting to the fuel line there. So it's going to connect to that blue Earl's looking fitting there, and we have to run it right through here on top of the injector harness to the back. So here's our fuel line, ran to there, we're just going to connect there, which we can adjust as necessary, because I think this is going to end up coming up here somewhere. So I think this is going to have to make it over there somehow, but it wants it to run there. So we'll find out. We can pull more slack as we go. So let's go ahead and grab that piping on this side and get it on here. So we've got this one all tight. I connected the fuel lines, tightened those down as well. Now I'm gonna put across our bracket that goes across here that holds our throttle cable. So there's that little bracket in place, and you can see the throttle bodies are missing. So right now we're just gonna run these guys. I'm gonna keep my eye out for a set of upgraded throttle bodies, but they're kind of not so common. So and actually I think Rose ones at the time of this video were actually sold out. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw these ones on there. So we'll pop them off here and we'll move everything over. So both throttle bodies are removed, and I'm gonna take off our idle air control valve too, because we're gonna need that. So next up, we're gonna be removing this bracket. So this is the stock bracket that goes between the two throttle bodies, and we're gonna be installing this one. So since that supercharger is gonna be going there, they made this bracket, and it's got the adjustment screw there. So we're gonna wiggle this out, kind of just like a ball joint type thing, which you can see right there. So we've got that throttle body on there. Now let's go ahead and put the other throttle body with the bracket on. So we've got this throttle body on. We're gonna go ahead and throw this bracket on. So it's gonna go underneath the supercharger like that. It's gonna pop into place there. And then now we can put our other throttle body on right here. So there's a set screw here, and you're gonna wanna adjust as needed so that when you open this side, that this one is immediately opening, as you can see. So we are good. We're not adjusting the actual flap and where that's set at, the stop set screw, but what we're adjusting is when this one moves, this one moves. So you can see even the slightest of movement in this one is moving this throttle body as well. Let's go ahead and throw our throttle cable on. So here's the throttle cable, pretty straightforward. We're just gonna put it wide open, hook it through. A little bit tight to get in there, but that's that. And then we'll make sure this clicks into place like so. And our tension seems to be pretty good on there, so we should have wide open throttle, and then this just hangs out here. So next up, I'm gonna be putting on the different map sensor, since we've got the 2-bar, and it comes with a different pigtail. So the pin position is different, so you'll notice that some of the wires are switched in their location, right? So if this is the top of the clip, you know, orange on the opposite side, green's in the middle, and black is off to the left on this one, or on this one, sorry, but you get the idea. So we're gonna match up the colors. So I'm gonna cut this here in case we ever need to go back. I'll trim off all this excess because it's pretty excessive, and we're gonna solder it together. So there's our wires. We've got heat shrink on them. I do have to connect my methanol kit to the 5-volt power source on this, which we'll do in just a second, but not necessarily a necessity. But this is the vacuum line that we ran from the front. So we're gonna plug this into our 2-bar, and we're gonna plug this sensor in.
And we can just tuck this up in the back here, probably tie wrap it back here.
Well, you guys, it is a bunch of hours later, and I just did a bunch of little things that kind of needed to be done and dealt with, but I'll review them with you guys here quickly. So our map sensor is connected. I still got to connect the wire, like I said, for our meth kit so that it references the 5-volt signal. So I'll do that. I just have to tap it off of one of those wires, but it is hooked up. Back here, there's a plug for a port that we don't necessarily use. I guess technically we could use it. Oh no, we can't actually use this because it's gonna be on vacuum side, but this, I guess some vehicles use this. On mine, I blocked it off. And over here, I ended up installing the airbox, and the reason why it looks all crazy like this is I did install my methanol injection. So my line comes up from here. If you guys haven't seen that video, I will link it. You guys can check it out. So I have the methanol pump in here, and I converted our washer fluid reservoir to a methanol tank. So you can see on the bottom there, it's got the feed, and it runs over here super slick. And then my injectors, if you guys can see them, they are on the bottom there. So there's one there, and the other one is right there. So super stealth looking. And what I want to do is, I don't know if you guys can see in there, but just want to see, you can probably see the injector right in there, or the nozzle. I just want to hit it, make sure that it's spraying both out of each one. I teed them off right in the center between the two, so they should be getting even distribution. And I just want to make sure that they're spraying before I put those back on. And then this thing is pretty much ready to fire. We'll check for fuel leaks in a second, but let's prime our methanol system and we'll see if it's spraying good. Okay, I just want to update you guys. When I did turn the ignition to on, I had like a colossal fuel leak, and I came up with a different method. I saw another video where somebody said that they kind of tucked in their coupling on the back and then just like laid in the pipe, but doing it that way actually pinched a couple of my injector gaskets, so I had to swap a few of them out for some new ones. I don't know if I can show you, but a few of them got pancaked pretty good, or pinched. They kind of returned to their original shape, but you can probably see it got pinched a little bit. So what I did instead was I slid the coupling all the way back onto this pipe so that I could just drop this fuel rail with the pipe, because it's one assembly, drop it straight down on the injectors and then bolt them down. So that way I got a straight shot instead of trying to install your injectors on an angle. So anyways, I got no fuel leaks now. Let's finally test that methanol injection. Well, I say she works. So right now I'm just filling the vehicle up with coolant. So this is the one that I've researched, and a lot of guys picked this one for the Viper, and distilled water. So I'm just filling it up, and while it burps and whatnot, I'm gonna load the tune. So I've got the HP tuners set up, ready to go. We're loading up the base tune. So got the HP tuners, the laptop connected to the MPVI2 on the OBD2 port. So let's go ahead and load that tune, and we'll keep burping the system. Okay, so the HP tuners is done writing. We've got our coolant full. We're gonna have to burp it as she warms up. But everything's tight, everything's double checked, and no fuel leaks, so now's the big moment. Okay, here we go, guys. I'm just gonna start real quick and then we'll double check everything. That's pretty normal so far. So I know I didn't run for too long, but just quick double check, make sure there's no leaks. So far so good. I don't smell anything, any more fuel than what we dumped all over the place. And same thing over here. Take a look all in there, and no leaks. So should be able to start this thing up and let it idle for a minute and see how she does. No smoke, no nonsense, no issues. Just got to keep an eye on our water levels and keep topping it up as needed.
yeah, no issues so far.
Okay guys, so everything's installed, everything looks amazing, and we just have to go through the tuning process and get this thing all dialed in. So we can't go out and just beat on it. Trust me from experience, I've been there, done that as a young teenager and grenaded stuff. So as much as you, I, or the next person wants to go out and feel like, you know, all the extra horsepower that we probably added, you can't. You kind of have to, you know, take things as they come, go through the tuning process, and make sure it's all sorted out. So that's what's gonna go on next. And then you guys better make sure you hit that subscribe button so you guys are notified of all the latest videos, because I'm gonna be posting more videos on this car once we get it all dialed in and everything. Obviously I'll be taking you guys along for the ride, show you guys how everything works, how much fun it probably hopefully is, and how hard it pulls and all that stuff. So make sure you guys give this video a thumbs up. Any questions, you guys have any questions on the setup, any parts that I may have used, I'll link them down in the description below, or ask me and I'll try to link that for you so I can get you guys hooked up with whatever you need. Also the crank pin video, that's also something we did on this channel, methanol injection kit. So all that stuff and everything you've seen on this car is on this channel, so check out those other videos and we'll see you on the next one.